I'd like to give myself a public shout out for beating Sabrina to the meeting today. It's a special day for me.
The first and last time.
Hey, welcome everybody. As always, we will give everyone a couple minutes to filter in. My name is Will Pedersen, and I will be your moderator today. I think we had a one pre-submitted question. Is that right, Sabrina?
I believe we actually have two.
Oh, we do. Okay, I see both of them. Yeah, one of them is from D Pitcher. Integration for Plaid. How would you remove the extra space up on a form when an element is hidden? J. Marshall. Okay, great. There's question 1 and question 2. All right, we'll go ahead and jump in. Oh, looks like we were both doing the same exact thing.
I just made sure that everyone could see it.
Oh, did I only do it to, oops, I see. Thank you. All right, so our first question is from David Pitcher. You guys have any integration for Plaid? If not, I'm curious about what my options are for a drop-in module that they have and being able to process a callback. What is Plaid, David? I actually don't know.
Yeah, so can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So basically, like, imagine that you have banks or financial institutions, and you want to download your bank data or process a transfer or something like this. Plaid is basically a middleman that aggregates all those financial institution APIs into their API so that you're getting a uniform, consistent thing across it. And apparently they collaborate with whatever their website says, like 11,000 financial institutions, and some big apps like Acorns, Venmo use them to be able to like have a user link up their bank account data, but you as the dev, like, building an app or the mechanism to be able to do that.
Right. Okay. We don't currently have a module for Plaid. I know that much for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking on the documentation and on GitHub for other like community developed things. I didn't see one. I just wanted to make sure.
I think the question is, does Plaid have like an HTTP, like a REST integration layer? Sometimes the financial service integrations don't. Like there's a company called Braintree, and they intentionally don't expose their services.
Yeah, they do. They have a whole collection of APIs that you can hit, and I signed up for a dev account to be able to get my API keys, and I'm able to hit those and bring back stuff.
Okay.
So I guess what they have is it's a thing called, they call it Link, and it's kind of a pre-done drop-in module that you would basically call in order to like represent that to a user for them to log in with their bank credentials and have it link up, and then you exchange some tokens out to be able to, for your app to process that using their credentials.
Right. Yeah, this would just sound to me, given the fact that we don't have a module right now, that this would just be a series of REST integrations like that you would build out using normal REST integration patterns.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the link, I guess it's like an application thing. I guess I'm curious how I pull that in and display that on a decisions form or a page, right?
Okay. Have you actually built a REST integration in decisions before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have one connecting to some of their stuff, and I've been trying to figure out how to get this guy to display on a I guess a form or a page, and I've
Mhm.
experimented with, I think you guys call it an external form step,
Okay.
and even I think there's a way that you can run like a JavaScript before you process that form. So I guess
Mhm.
I'm curious to learn more about that external form step and what all our capabilities are with that, if that makes any sense.
Well, the external form is really to redirect a user to like a third party site for some information and then allow you to come back into the workflow. So you could imagine if there was like a Plaid integration site, like our Plaid like submit your credit card transaction site, you could theoretically redirect a user to that site with a bunch of URL parameters that would then allow you to make a call back into decisions to restart the workflow at a certain point.
I see. Okay.
I'm not sure that fits your need here, though.
Yeah, I guess whenever I go to their web page or their external form, they're going to pass me back some information like
Mhm.
like a temporary access token, and then I
Mhm.
basically need to, how do I grab that back and then process it against one of their APIs to exchange that for a different token, and then I guess pass it back to them that I've done that, if that makes any sense.
Now, well, you're gonna. To me, I would think the first thing is just you would figure out the like token endpoint to call with a
Right,
REST
right.
step, right?
Yep.
And then you would have another step that consumes that token downstream. So you're not
Right.
actually sending a user to sign into anything. The workflow engine makes a call, gets a token back, then passes that token as a parameter into the following calls.
Yeah. So I guess I have this link app thing from them in the middle of it. Like it's basic. They do that basically, so it's a uniform thing across any integration that they have with any financial institution, so it all looks the same.
Okay.
So I'm basically, I'm trying to redirect them to that web page. I hit the endpoint to get my token, and then I'm redirecting them to that web page using that token, and then I need them to put in their credentials to be able to essentially sign up for a Plaid account and then link their bank account information. And then once they've done that, they should pass me back an access token that I store to be able to access that banking information whenever I want to make that call.
Okay. I don't know how you can get the token back programmatically from the Plaid site into the workflow, unless there's some sort of functionality there that says like on successful submission, send this token to this endpoint.
That's exactly what's happening.
They give you the ability to configure an endpoint to send the token to once a user is signed, has you entered their username and password.
Yeah, I believe so.
Oh, okay. Well, then you could just build just a decisions flow that could consume that token, right? You could pass it in. Like you could build up a flow whose job is to take the token in and then store it. I don't know, like if you're storing it into the database.
It would be database stored.
So so theoretically the sequence of events would be something like this. I don't know how well I can rough this up for you, but let's see. So let's create a folder here. Lunch and learn 920. Here we go. I'm just going to use placeholder. Maybe I won't. All right, so like you could have a flow. This is like launch new Plaid request or something, right?
Right.
And this could use like an inf or external form. And then sit and wait. Like there's some downstream process, right? Like, so you could build an external form. And we've got docs about this, it'd be like,
Yeah, I looked through that and I couldn't quite figure it out.
well, the big thing here is your URL. So like you're going to do something, right? And then this is like the site you're going to redirect to, right?
Right.
www.google.com or whatever.
Gotcha.
And if I run this flow, it should redirect me to Google, right? So it's
Right.
functioning as redirect. And what it's doing is, if I ran that again, it's appending all this stuff into the URL to let the
Right.
flow call back. But your site's not going to, I'm sure Plaid doesn't accept these URLs, like, because it doesn't know what these are, right?
Yeah.
So what you could do is you launch an external form, and you get this, if we look at, there's a special integration details link on this form. And then if I look at this, say interact with APIs, form service. And what I can do is I can complete this flow down a particular path with a particular call, using some of this. So theoretically, I could make a call, but this is probably, you probably have limited control over the callback URL format. Like I bet Plaid just sends a particular request in, and you can't control. You probably give it a URL and maybe some small things, but what you probably need is two flows. Like this would be the flow that launches into Plaid, right?
Right.
And then another flow that you would give to Plaid that would say like consume Plaid request, right? This is like consume Plaid request. And now what we can do here is, let's assume this thing, now this is going to turn, like, I'll just call this Plaid token ID. Like,
Right.
you probably don't, knowing how a lot of systems work, you probably don't have very much control. So you might have to look at a flow type called post to flow, because this flow is going to want a very specific input format. And if Plaid sends what it wants to send, you might have to use this as post to flow. But there's steps that you can use to like complete form assignment. So if I just you could have another flow whose job is to, push main external form forward. And the one dumb way would be to build up, like if I look at form service, I could make a REST call, submit form complete, right? I could build a REST call into the form service for this particular step, right? I could call this URL, right, in this flow as a REST step. And if I did that, let me duplicate, what it would do is push my main flow forward. So I can interact with I can force a flow to go down another outcome path in another flow, if that makes any sense.
I see what you're doing. Okay.
And you can do that because you get this, for these ones, you do that because you get this generated service. So as long as you have the step and flow tracking IDs, you can do that. So the question is really, I think, the questions for you to confirm are, can I use an external form to redirect to Plaid? Answer that question for yourself if that works or not.
Okay.
And some of these things do not like the URL parameters, just as a note. If that's a thing, we can do this with another step called a script form step. That way you can do something very similar. But this is where I would start. See if you can get your redirect into the Plaid login screen or whatever it might be, right?
Okay. Yeah, I tried that with the external form and I was unable to do it. So I guess I'm curious if you don't mind real quick elaborating on the script form step.
I'll have to ask that we send you some example, but there's a script form step, and I can who's on here from our end? Sabrina, can you get the details of the script form step information that we sent over from Straz, please?
Absolutely.
Basically, you can run a script here. What we did is we had a customer who was trying to redirect to like Wells Fargo,
Yeah.
for some reason, and that blows up if you send custom URL params.
Okay.
So we sent them over some information. I have to get the actual script contents from the developer that did this, and we can send those over to you on email. But there's this other much less commonly used step that we can write like JS right into.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because that, I think that's one of the languages that their little drop-in module thing is written in. So I wonder if I can just take if I can take their thing to initialize that in JS and stick it in here.
Another thing might be that you have to write like a JavaScript control. Like you might have to actually, like you can write JS,
Yeah,
and then build a decisions form component in JS in
right,
JavaScript,
okay. I got
and
you.
then let load a decisions form that could make a call out, like if it has like so that you could load in like we could send an example to you as well of a JS control. In fact, we could get that from Stratus as well to Braintree.
Okay,
To give you an idea of what that might look like. And that's like us loading up the like Braintree credit card submission page, or like sort of div element in a decisions form without redirecting to anything else.
Perfect. Yeah.
So that might be something as well.
Yeah, I think that would probably, yeah. Okay, I'll explore option 1. And if you guys don't mind shooting those over, I may explore option 2 also.
Yeah, happy to send that over. But likely you still need, now if you use a JavaScript control, which does, to be clear, does require you actually write JS.
Yeah.
That might take the need away from this pattern of like pushing a flow forward. But maybe not. Like the question is, I guess, what happens once you submit, once you've gotten a user onto Plaid and they've submitted, how do we get that data back into decisions?
Right.
And you can build flows to just consume those requests from other systems. It's just a question of what level of control over the sending format do you have? Because you might have to use a flow behavior like post to flow, which can handle more very generic input formats, where the flows you build in the designer want very specific formats. Like if you misspell this or like or exclude it, it's gonna throw up at you.
Okay.
So hopefully that gives you
the post to flow. Is that like a behavior or?
Yeah, it's one of our behaviors.
Okay.
If you just search post to flow in our doc site, you'll find it here.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll just read through that documentation.
Okay, that helped give you something to look at next. That one's
yeah,
hard.
Definitely.
Okay.
Thanks a bunch. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and really quickly here, we got a question. How do you remove the extra space left behind in a form when an element is hidden? And this is from Janice. And so Janice, you want to make sure that you're leveraging a form component called a vertical or horizontal stack. Right now, if you don't use that that component, you just get empty space. If I create a really quick form here. And then here, what I'm going to do is go under layouts, and there's the two I want to look at is vertical stack and horizontal stack. The difference is a vertical stack, things slide to the top, and a horizontal stack, they slide from right to left. So, and what you get here is, let's assume I put in like some text boxes into this stack. If the second text box was hidden, what you would see is two text boxes because the bottom one would slide up. So our visibility rules interact with our stacks to give you space reclaiming form designs. So you need to use stacks in concert with visibility rules to avoid having any blank space on your form. I'm sure, at least I would hope so. Stack layouts, horizontal and vertical stacks. Horizontal vertical stacks. Here's me doing something. Do we have a happy GIF here? Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know if you can see in the GIF right there on this doc right here, horizontal and vertical stack layouts. You can see the buttons moving up and down based on that one grid hiding and showing. Is that give you the answer to your question?
Well, I have a couple of them set up, but they don't actually do what I need them to do. Would they have to, like, if I have an entire form, just a grid, and I have a vertical stack with some controls in it, and they have their own separate form rules. Would I have to have like a nested vertical stack to hide that stack?
I think the question turns on what's your root level control. So like, for example, if I come back to my view up here, this is a vertical stack inside of a grid. So it can only hide and show the things inside of the vertical stack, right? So you might, if you put a vertical stack in a grid, it can only hide and show inside that grid section. Like it doesn't control the parent container at all.
Okay.
So using grids as the default or the root level form layout limits some of your hiding and showing capabilities, I guess.
Okay.
Because for example, like if I were to take, let me just move this grid here, and I were to put a container, like if I was to drop a grid here, and then move this this grid here, like it's only going like in this was, because like if this was long, like if this particular grid cell could extend, like it's going, it can't control its parent container. It'll just apply a scroll bar to this grid. The vertical stack can't control itself. So some of the things we see is like, you might have like a horizontal stack, like you want to hide and show a particular set of buttons, right? So you might have a couple buttons in a horizontal stack. Now their space on the form, at least vertically, is static, but you only know you'll only ever show one of these buttons or one of these radio button lists. So the vertical stack controls that sort of the display of that particular grid cell, but the cell itself, it is not being controlled because it's just part of a grid.
All right.
Is that, am I helping out at all?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that give you the information that you need? Okay. Okay, and there was a question here from John. I saw it a moment ago. Can we just unmute John?
Hey, yep. Can you
Go
hear
ahead,
me?
John. Yeah, I can.
Okay. I got a question. I couldn't make this work. Basically, it's I'm using a string builder. Just for testing purposes, I'm using Decisions version 6.
Okay.
I was using a string builder and then adding some lines to the string using the append line method.
Okay. Sure.
I don't know if it's the right way to do it or how I should do that, but the idea was basically add some lines that would say, like, for instance, add quantity 5, add quantity 6, remove quantity 3, and with the description of each line. And then I wanted to send that by email, but the problem I'm having is that it's not giving me a new line on the email. It's just giving everything like everything in one line, you know, like putting like a white space or something, but I'm not being able to get a new line. And I thought that the append line was basically that. I mean, append line, it's like adding a new line and putting the text in that new line. But when I send the email, it doesn't respect that. So I wanted to know how to make this work. I tried after I closed the string builder. I tried using the toText method name to get the result string. And I think I also tried something like HTML, but it didn't work either. So
is it possible that you need to add like a BR tag at the end of the string? I'm not sure. I'm not sure append to line handles HTML text. Do you know?
Okay.
I can show you. I just did one of these builds recently for something internally, and I'll show you what I did. It's not using string builder, but it's a pattern that I really like.
That what I was going to do. I also used to HTML text, which is a different step.
Yeah, sure.
That didn't work either. I thought that maybe that step would convert, if I use append line, would convert that lines to using the BR tag or something. So when you send the email, it would, but it didn't work either. So just show me if there is something I could do and I can try it out.
Yeah, here.
Can I ask a question? So did you use the append line or did you use the append HTML line?
No, the append line directly. Is there an append HTML line as well?
There's a step called append HTML line, and that will actually like add like what was talking about earlier. Will add the the bracket of the BR and add that break into it. I think the other one is if you're doing more plain text, and then you use the append line. But I know I've had success with if I'm trying to construct HTML using the string builder, I'll use the append HTML line and then the append HTML line with tags. So I'll type that in the chat so you can look for that step in the steps toolbox so you have that. But that's what I've used.
Okay, and then always use the method name create string builder. It's not there something like create HTML string builder or something like that, right? It's
correct. You just use the create string builder. You just use the append HTML lines, append HTML line with tags.
And then when I got to convert the string builder to a string on the output, I use the to_HTML text directly. Okay. Yep. Okay, perfect. I'll try that out.
John, just a quick note. Let me show you something I did. This one is a little bit more work, but gives you more control. So what you see here is an email where I'm building up a dynamic HTML table.
Okay.
And this is a pattern I like a lot. And the way that this works is I built a report that shows me tickets that are getting close to 24 hours to first response time, right? And then I call that report as a run report step.
Yep.
And then what I do is I see if the list is empty because I run this thing on a scheduled job every 30 minutes. And I want to make sure if there's no data, it ends and nothing gets sent out. And then what I do is I loop the data from that report. And I use this pattern here with an in-velocity merge step, which you can see here. Or what I'm doing is I'm building up. And the nice thing about this is I can, if I look here at my create data step, you can see what I do is I open up a table and then I provide some table headers. And I can do inline styling here if I want. And then on this in-velocity merge step, what I do is I pass that value into previous string, and then I write, you can see that I'm opening up and closing a new table row. And then each of these $signs in curly braces, because I have this require bracket set, allows me to pass in a value. So I can open a row, open a table data element, insert a value, close the element, and then open a new one.
Oh, that's great.
And then what I do is I use this change value for output string. And what you'll notice is there's a string here called previous string. And previous string takes an output string. And then I change the value of output string. And if you come back and look at this create data step, you'll notice this is where I declare output string.
Okay.
So I loop this based on how many records I get to build up my HTML table, inserting everything into the cells. And then I just pass that into a send email step, which with this sort of mapping.
How is that step called? The one you use there, the custom merge or something like that I'm seeing?
Yeah, it's called custom merge. If you just search for in-velocity, NVEL, you'll find it in the toolbox.
Okay.
It's an in-velocity merge step.
Does this exist on version 6?
Yes, it does.
In-velocity. Okay. Yeah, perfect. I'll take that into account. I'll try first the simple way, just using the append the HTML, because it's very simple what I need to do. I just need to show some lines with a new line BR. at the end, but if that doesn't work, I will try this one. So thanks for the info.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to help.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is it possible to hide the prompt for form input when a flow is run? Yes, it is. Let me get rid of this view. Back to my local. And so what the person who's asking this is asking this. If I have a flow, and let me just put a really stupid form here, and that form takes in a string and goes to a form. And then I go ahead, save and close this, and I run that flow either from an action in the portal or from an integration. It's going to prompt me and ask me to enter in that data. So this is expected. So the way to get around this is to, if you know that sometimes the flow will take in data when you use it in one place, and sometimes the flow won't take in data because it's used in a different way or a different place, it would be to just wrap that flow in another flow. So I create a new flow here called parent or wrapper flow. And then I can call that flow I just created, which was flow 1, which is in my current folder here, as a subflow. So the only job, this flow's only job is just to create like a layer in between the user action and the flow. So if I run this now, it'll just show me that ugly form that I built. So the reason is because the flow input expects data. And you're saying like, oh, I'm likely the way what's happening here is, sometimes we see this where I want to use the same form to create and edit my object, right? And you can do that, but likely what you need to do is create this other sort of wrapper flow. And it might only have a single step, which is just the subflow you want to call, and you just call this flow. So maybe this is like the create flow, and this is the edit flow, if that example makes any sense. So I'm not sure who's asking the question since it's submitted anonymously. But if you like, you can use the raise hand feature if you want to have a chat about that. But it is expected. You can't, it's not a configuration. You can say, don't ask me for input data, right? You have to wrap it in another flow and call that wrapped flow, that parent flow now, to get around the thing that you don't want your users to see. Okay. That's all of the questions that we have so far. Anyone have anything that they'd like to ask? You can use the raise hand feature or the or type out a question, and I would be happy to answer it. Yeah, go ahead, Jess.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Say you have a form, and it's not assigned, but after it's completed, is it possible to assign it after it's completed, that same form, to yourself? So it would show up in like a dashboard or something.
Mm-hmm. If you want to assign a task to the submitter after something has happened?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sure. Then all we need to do here is access some of the flow data. So assign to submitter. So we know we can assign tasks dynamically, right? And we can do that. If I bring a form over, I just need to have a stable of forms so I can stop making the world's ugliest forms. So here's a form, right? And then we know we can change this to from in session to assigned. Now, the default way is it says, who do you want to assign this to? But what we want is dynamic assignment, not static. And this assumes static. So under assignment setup edit here, there is a property called accounts and groups. And we can say build array, and then we can go to item 0. So we're going to build a list of account IDs or emails or group names or group IDs. One of those 4 options can pass into this successfully. And what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and find flow data initiating user email. So initiating user email is the email address of the person who launches this flow. And now when this workflow hits this step, whoever the submitter, like say you're setting up, I'm sure you're probably setting up a process folder and you're like doing all this other stuff. Like maybe on the conclusion of an approval, you want to assign a task to someone that says like review all of the comments or review the history and close or something, right? And so when this flow hits this step, it will assign itself to the user that launched this flow, because the flow data automatically keeps track of the initiating user email for you. Does that answer the question that you're asking?
Is it possible to assign it only if it's submitted? Because if they don't complete it, I don't want it to show up.
Say that one more time.
Like to assign it only if the form is submitted, because it assigns once it starts, once the flow is run.
Okay.
And if they don't complete the form, I don't want it to be assigned to them.
Sure. So there's some sort of like in session. You're saying there's 2 forms here, or is it the same form?
Same form.
But so they're going to complete one. They're going to complete a form, and then once they complete that form, it's going to then be assigned to them. The same form gets assigned to them.
Right, but only for like view only purposes, because it doesn't show up unless it's assigned to them. It won't show up in the dashboard.
Is this just
In the
to let
portal,
them view the data that they submitted?
Yes.
I wouldn't use an assignment for that, because then you're going to have some like that will sit around forever waiting for someone to use it. You could just think about like an entity action that uses the same form. So sometimes what we see is, let me create a quick data structure here. We see this read-only view request kind of not pretty frequently. So are you using process folders?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to create a process folder here called view task example, right? I'm just going to put a single property on here and save this. And then I'm going to put together a flow really quickly. And that flow is going to, let me just pick existing. Which one is it? Form 1, I think, is the one I just did. Let me edit this, and I'll take a string. So this is my submission form, right? And I'm going to get rid of this. So here's my submission form. It is in session. So I'll set up a process folder. And get this fully configured. Just put in some constant text for now. I'll go ahead and select my extension data. And here I'll select the type I just created, which is hang tight. Assigned view task. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I'm going to set up my process folder and build data, pass in my value for string 1. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. So I want to run this, right? I'm going to run this. And let's assume there's a task. So I've submitted this thing now, right? What I can, so now it's, I think if I understand your question is kind of like, well, I submitted it, it disappears. I need to give them insight into seeing it after they submitted it, right? Like all your submitted requests.
Correct.
So what we can do is build a report of these. I could say like all current user submissions. And in here, what I can do is find that data type I created, user defined type, flow data extension, view task example. I can create, entity name, created by, created on, and state and everything. And then what I can do is under filters, under entity filters, I could say created by me. And that will let me to have a dashboard that I can see all of my submitted pieces. So that's sort of part of your ask, I think. Here's me using a filter and the default data source to provide these aren't things assigned to me, these are things submitted by me. So I could see a history view of all of the workflow tasks that I've submitted, all the PTO requests or something, right? And if you wanted to give them a view of it, what you could do is in the configuration folder, what I would do is build a user action called like view details or something. And in this, I would just use that same form that I used to submit it, right? I'll pick the form. And then here I can pass the string value in because this is an entity action. So here's my extension data, and here's my str1. I get this for free because I'm in a entity action. And now if I come back and I run my report, which is here, I can see all the things I've submitted. I can right click and click view details and see what is effectively the submission form, but it's just in a different flow. I'm using the same form in a different flow, and here I'm using it just to review the details as opposed to submit a request. So this is a pattern we see customers use a lot to sort of allow the same submission view to be viewed in a read-only way after the task has been submitted to the appropriate team.
Okay, that's what I needed.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, who else? Who else has got questions today? Is that everything for this afternoon? All right, if that's everything, we'll go ahead and call it a day. As always, appreciate everyone's time. And just for anyone that's still interested, Decisions Days is October 4th through 6th. Got a lot of great topics and a lot of opportunities to connect with us as well as other members of the Decisions developer community. So please reach out if you have any questions about what that event looks like and/or if you can or want to join. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great afternoon and talk to you tomorrow.